All right, kind of a hot day here in Southern California, but I'm going to be doing a Transformers review nonetheless, and you can't stop me. For today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Beast Wars Mega Class Scorponok. And yeah, this is obviously the Walmart reissue that they just put out. And while the other reissues mostly like were the same figures as the original ones, they had minor changes, mostly in like small paint deco changes and stuff like that. This one has quite a considerable difference with its original version. They've decided here to go with instead of for the original, all of this like silvery kind of gray plastic was actually just like jet black, and for this reissue, they've decided to go with a slightly more show accurate color and go with this kind of gray. And personally, I think it looks a lot better. I don't have that original Scorponok, but this one really does. I feel a lot more show accurate. And from pictures I've seen, I don't know. There's something about the black that just kind of like feels like it just eats a lot of the sculpted detail, whereas the more kind of like gray silvery kind of highlights a lot of the sculpted detail in a way that I think just looks generally a lot better. I always thought that one looked a little bit unfinished, which is like one of the reasons I never really bothered to pick up an original Scorponok. Like, really, I think I own like a lot of the original Beast Wars collection. Like, well, I don't know, not like most of it. Maybe I'd say like 60 to 70% or something like that. And so far, this vintage line is starting to hit a lot of a lot of the little gaps in my collection, which is nice. Scorponok was one of those ones that I never really wanted to pick up because like I didn't think it was very show accurate at all, and it didn't really scale well with the other figures in terms of how Scorponok scaled with them in the show. So I just kind of decided it wasn't worth it, especially because it was kind of hard to track down in good shape, and I didn't think it looked very good with the black plastic. But, you know, now that I've got a more like sort of show accurate and better like looking Scorponok for my sort of main collection in the Kingdom one, it's fun to check out some of these vintage toys because it's like, you know, it's sort of the same thing with Optimus Primal and Megatron. Like, Optimus Primal I always thought like looked like a good figure, but it was too big compared to the other figures. And at that point, there were already kind of like better representations of Optimus Primal. And Megatron, like, you know, it looks good and it scales fine, but it's kind of like a weird, messy brick in its robot mode. And I just generally preferred the Transmetal version anyway. So, like, that's kind of the one I went with. And, you know, Scorponok was a similar case where it's like, it's just one that I never really bothered to pick up. So it's nice that, you know, those three were ones that were hit early in the vintage line. And like Cybershark was announced. Cybershark, for whatever reason, is another one that I never bothered tracking down. And so that's cool. I'm going to have a better opportunity to get that one. But yeah, either way, I don't know. I'm just happy that we got this reissue, and it actually looks better, I think, than the original one, because I like the gray plastic way more than the black plastic. But either way, here he is in his Scorpion mode, and I think, you know, he looks fairly good. Obviously, it doesn't really look that much like a real Scorpion. He's got like diddly little legs down here, and he's got, you know, closer to the weird human eyes that he had in the cartoon, but a little bit more accurate than that, but not quite, not quite there. And then like the stinger is like, you know, more of like a metal weapon rather than what an actual scorpion stinger looks like. And the claws really look more like crab claws than scorpion claws. I don't know. He's one of those ones, especially like a lot of the buggy Transformers in the original Beast Wars line. They sort of felt like just what the designers thought those animals looked like without bothering to look it up, rather than like actually looking up reference material or anything like that. But, you know, just for a fun kind of toyetic Scorpion, I think he looks pretty fun. He's got 3 gimmicks overall, and they're all accessible in this mode. The one that's like really meant for Scorpion mode is he's got this little lever on the back of his Scorpion tail, and if you get your finger in the right place, you can push that lever to kind of leverage it forward and have like a stinging attack. If you just do it like straight up, he kind of just bops himself in the head, which is not super effective, but there is like a hinge back here that you can bring this back 1 click and then bring this forward a bit to have it be still kind of not really that great of a reach, but it's a fun gimmick to do nonetheless. And then his other 2 gimmicks are both in the claws here. This one is fairly simple. If you just pull up on the top claw, it shoots 1 missile, and then the bottom of the claw shoots another missile, and they shoot rather far. They're on a bit of a hair trigger, which can be kind of annoying, but it's not too bad. The other annoying thing is like if you're trying to put them back in, your natural tendency would be to like open the claw to do that, but then they won't latch in. So you have to kind of like keep the claw mostly closed and then lock them in. And still, they can kind of launch out a little bit easily, but once you have the claw actually closed around them, then they're not really going anywhere. And then the other side, and this is really cool, if you push back on this little lever here, he shoots out his little cyber bee. It just unfolds from his claw here, and now obviously he has only half a claw, which is a little bit unfortunate for him, but still a really cool gimmick, and I love the look of the little cyber bee here. When you're putting it back to like latch it back into the claw, first thing you want to do is you want to take this panel, and this is kind of easy to miss, is you want to take the panel with the head and the legs on it, you want to fold that up and then close the claws around it and kind of hold it in place, and then you can take the little back section here and fold it up, and then you can push it back in. First few times I did it, I didn't realize that this piece was also on a hinge, so I was just trying to fold it up like that, because it still, mostly looks like it could fold up like that, but it won't actually latch in place if you do it like that, at least not properly. So you do want to do all those steps there and then latch it in. And again, is another good reason that we have a reissue here, because like I'm pretty sure like on a lot of the old copies of the original toy, this mechanism has kind of broken down over time, and people have kind of resorted to just like holding the claw in with like rubber bands and stuff because it doesn't latch in properly. And even now it's not like totally perfect, because like it has a bit of a gap there on the top of the claw, but that's not the end of the world. In terms of articulation, obviously you saw pretty much what the tail can do, and then these becoming the robot mode arms have a few joints there. They can rotate like that, rotate in and out, have an elbow joint there, and then rotation at the claw itself. The head can kind of, you can tilt the head up. That works pretty well. Then the legs are all just kind of static pieces there. In terms of comparison, here he is with the Kingdom Scorponok, who obviously, this one is much more of just like a fun toyetic thing. This one was really going for much more like real world accuracy in terms of Scorpion mode, which I appreciate. I think like in terms of accuracy of the show, this one's probably a little bit closer, but personally, I prefer the accuracy to a real world Scorpion. I feel like that makes it make a bit more sense for me. But they both look good, and even this one is not like super accurate to the show either. But here he is also with the reissues of Optimus Primal and Megatron, just so you can see what they look like together. Pretty cool. And to get onto transformation here, he's got some neat stuff going on. First thing you want to do is unpeg the head from the body here, and then it kind of splits it, by itself. It'll actually end up becoming the robot mode legs, which I think is pretty cool. You bring it down like that. You kind of want to bring them out to the side just so you have clearance here to do some of this other stuff. You want to take the robot mode head, fold it up on this little armature here, and make sure that this peg is facing forward. Then you want to take the tail here, rotate it around, and then bring it up on that hinge that I showed off there. And then you can take this whole section, oh god, launch the Cyber Bee. I'll put that back in later. You want to take this whole section here and just fold it up like this, so that this peg on the little armature here goes into this peg hole right here. These two peg holes are where the feet plugged in to make the Scorpion mode head. So you just want to bring it up like that, line it up, and peg it into place there. Then you can finish off with the legs and bring them down just like that. Again, kind of getting them out of the way of the Scorpion mode legs there. Then the Scorpion mode legs, you just fold onto the side here to kind of wrap around his abdomen. And then what's really cool is his little mandibles here for the Scorpion mode head actually become the feet, and then the rest of the head becomes the heel. That's pretty cool. I like that a lot. And then you can pretty much just do whatever you want with the arms here. I usually just orient them so the elbows are facing forward, and he's got it out like that. And then we can, of course, put his little Cyber Bee back in there to finish off the look. And there we have, his claws backwards. And I launched the Cyber Bee again. Great. That's another, a lot of the mechanisms on these early Beast Wars toys are kind of easy to accidentally launch, which is not the end of the world, but worth mentioning. And there he is in his robot mode, looking very cool there. His tail is going to stick off the top of the screen just because it sticks up too high. But he's got his mutant mask deployed right now, like a lot of the original Beast Wars toys had, especially in that first year. So you can see what that looks like. Cool. And then to get his regular robot mode head, here, let me focus a bit more. You just want to take the mutant head and split it down the middle, and there he has his robot mode head. Neither of them are like particularly accurate to the show design. I think this one is closer just because they based it off of this with like the visor and then interpreted, the two sides of the shell there as like the weird little mandibles that he has in the show model. So neither of them really look like his show model, but I think they are both good looking head sculpts in their own right. And it's one of those ones where it's like, I actually really don't know which way I want to display this, with the regular head or the mutant head. Whereas like with Optimus Primal and Megatron, I think generally both of the robot mode heads look better than the mutant heads, but I think he's pretty much equal. But yeah, in terms of articulation here, obviously, he's not too terribly articulated, but he's got a lot of ball joints and stuff. Well, I guess really only at the hips he's got ball joints. Well, no, the head too. Head's on a ball joint. In this mode, it can only really rotate a little bit. If you put it in the mutant head mode, it also gets a little bit of wiggle back and forth. But when you have it open, it does kind of bump into the shoulders there. And then the shoulders can rotate around like that. They can go out to the side. They only go in about that much, so he sort of always has his arms kind of sticking out like that. It's got 90 degrees at bend at the elbow, even though they're pretty high up the arm there. And then the claws themselves have oh my god, words. The claws themselves have a swivel right there in the middle. And then, like, obviously this claw opens, but it's also tied to the launching mechanism of the guns. And this one you really can't open and close aside from like launching the Cyber Bee, but then he's only got half a claw there. So they're pretty much static. And then nothing at the waist. At the hips, he's got big ball joints here, which are a little bit loose on mine, unfortunately. He's got no dedicated thigh swivel, but luckily the ball joints at the hips are big enough that he gets a bit of range of movement there. And then for the knees, maybe a degree or two under 90, but still pretty good. And then the feet can only really the heel and the toe can kind of independently go up and down, which can be helpful for some poses if you're trying to use his feet to adjust the angle of his foot, but no ankle tilt or anything like that, like you'd see on modern figures. Obviously, all three of his gimmicks are still accessible in this mode. These two are pretty much the same, so we'll save that for now. But for the tail gimmick, it's now much more like launching in front of him, which I feel like makes a bit more sense in this mode because it actually looks like it'd be stabbing at someone who's about eye level with him, whereas the Scorpion mode, he was just kind of bopping himself in the head, but still cool in both modes nonetheless. Here he is again with Kingdom Scorponok, just so you can see what the two of them look like together. And yeah, there's kind of pros and cons to each of them. I think in terms of fine detail, I like him better because, he's got definitely a much more accurate head sculpt and, the claws are a bit more in proportion, and he's got the little, gold piece in the chest like he did in the show. But proportionally, other than the claws, I think he generally still kind of wins out. He definitely does the tail coming out of the back thing a lot better than this guy did. He's definitely got a cleaner sort of backpack, though, to be fair, I mean, the trade-off for that is he is kind of piddly, non-existent scorpion legs in his scorpion mode, whereas he's got much more accurate scorpion legs, which have to go somewhere. So, I'll give him a pass on that. But, in terms of show accuracy, I feel like both of them just still aren't really quite there. I feel like one of the big features of Scorponok in the show is that he was a bit of a hunchback with his, head coming out of his chest a little bit, sort of like ogre style, whereas neither of these guys really do that. So, I don't know. There's still some room to improve the future, but I like both of them in their own right. I think they're both fun toys. I know people like to give this one a little slack. I like him, even though he's still a little bit stumpy, I will admit. And then here he is again with the reissues of Optimus Primal and Megatron, just so you can see what he looks like with them. Obviously a lot smaller, being a mega class where they are ultra classes, but that's what they look like. And then just for some standard size comparisons, here he is again with Kingdom Sideswipe like I usually do, and here he is with Kingdom Optimus Primal, just because I feel like, head to head, they're pretty much, he's like the most comparable in terms of height with other recent figures that we've gotten. And that's part of the thing that I wanted to talk about, is that like he definitely does feel like pretty solidly like a Voyager class, but they're selling the reissue for $40 instead of like $30 or like $32, which is what the Voyagers are now. And like he definitely feels like he's probably got a bit more plastic, and then he's got like extra metal with all the springs and stuff for his mechanisms, but still sort of feels like he should be closer to that Voyager price point as opposed to the $40 price point that they gave him. But I don't know. These reissues are maybe a bit overpriced, but it's still cool to get him nonetheless. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about this guy. He's a really fun figure in terms of like quality of the reissue as opposed to the original. Obviously, the mechanisms are a bit more intact just because it's a physically newer figure. I think that the silver was a really smart choice for the reissue as opposed to the black. Like, yes, it's less accurate to the original toy, but it just looks a lot better in my opinion, and definitely more show accurate. And then in terms of other quality things, really the only issue I have is that the ball joints on the hips are kind of loose, and that's not too big a deal and is pretty easy to fix, especially since they're ball joints. So not too big of a deal, just worth mentioning. But yeah, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. Oh, wait, there's one other thing that I did want to show off with the original Scorponok here is the Cyber Bees. I wanted to compare them. Here we've got the old Cyber Bee with the new Cyber Bee. Obviously, this one's a bit more show accurate, but is a lot smaller and hides entirely within the claw as opposed to being part of the claw. But just thought it would be cool to show those guys off together if I can get my camera to focus on them. There we go. New and old Cyber Bee. And then, he's got like, obviously he's got, physical launching missiles for this, whereas these ones were more show accurate. Kind of a neat thing where it's just like, the show took the gimmicks from the toy and made them like feel and look a little bit more realistic, like weapons contained in his body. And then the new toys can kind of go off of the show design. So it's sort of like stepping stones to get from the original toy to the new toy in terms of like how those gimmicks carry over. Pretty cool. But yes, now actually that is the end of the video. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Beast Wars Mega Class Scorponok.